Hey, what's going on, everybody? I wanted to talk about a topic today that I keep seeing people argue about on the internet that I think is kind of dumb. And the argument is, what is more important to train, your rifle or your pistol? And I want to make clear off top, I'm not trying to claim as like instructor status or any expert status on this. I am a student always, all of us are, and that I just don't believe that makes me disqualified to talk about this subject, and I'll tell you why. So the argument that I keep hearing about why a pistol is more important to train than a rifle is because you're more likely to use it in your day-to-day life than you are your rifle, and I can mostly agree with that, and I can understand that sentiment. But I think if we follow that same intellectual consistency as an argument, a lot more people need to start taking extracurricular driving classes, right? A lot more people need to start taking CLS and TCCC classes. A lot more people need to start getting into the gym, okay? A lot of people need to start doing MMA. You're a lot more likely to use your hands than a pistol. And a lot more people need to, pretty much just take a fire extinguisher, right? A lot more people need to take their shit to the fire department to make sure that stuff has been updated and that it doesn't have any defect and that they actually know how to work it. Okay, so there's a lot more things that I think are more likely to end you that people neglect. And I think if we follow that same intellectual consistency, it doesn't hold up, right? Now, I think some people say that, a rifle's more important because of the fact that the Second Amendment, rebellion, okay. I don't think it's any more important to train that over a pistol, even though that is the intention of the Second Amendment, because we have a saying in the Marine Corps and it's called get to the fight, okay? If you can't get to the fight doesn't matter. So I'm gonna say your everyday life with your pistol is kind of like the preparation for the fight, all the prac app, all the studying, all the training, right? If you can't survive that when you get to the fight, it doesn't matter. So I think you need to understand both. But when people start laughing at guys that are really running their rifle hard or really taking that kind of stuff serious, the Second Amendment, and if you actually read it, it says that it's necessary to the security of a free state, okay? And if you look into further context from James Madison, that has to do with foreign and domestic, right? You're not going to have that free state if you completely neglect a rifle and you don't even own the tools to utilize it, right? i.e. other shit. And only have a pistol. So that's kind of where I think it's dumb, right? So we're, as a Second Amendment community, kind of eating ourselves whenever we take a side on either one. They're both extremely important. And I think that whenever we start just doing that, I think that with us supposed to be the beacon of freedom, right? The Second Amendment community, we're supposed to be all inclusive. I think a lot of times we get really competitive with each other and then it becomes our own fault, okay? So I think we should stop arguing about it. I think we should agree to our differences, and I think that we should look at the Second Amendment as a better or in better context, because what it also does, it starts putting that seed of, well, why does somebody need that, right? If it's not important, if it's laughable, if it's a LaRpER's fantasy, how is that? Why do you need it, right? So can you see how that snowball effect can lead to other things? And I'll tell you what, the women and children of Waco who were burned alive by their own government, they didn't think that needing the tools to defend themselves from it was a LaRpER's fantasy. Randy Weaver and his family at Ruby Ridge, he didn't think that it was a LaRpER's fantasy, and his son didn't, who ended up getting in a gunfight with 2 agents, and he ended up dying, right? And so did one of the agents. So he didn't think it was a LaRpER's fantasy. The men and women of Lexington and Concord who stood against a much larger force and a much more experienced force, about 5 years back then. That was the average years of combat experience that the British regular had over the militiaman at Lexington and Concord, right? They didn't think it was a LaRpER's fantasy when they stood against the most powerful military at the time, right? Well, I'll also say Stephen Williford, right? That man responded to an active shooter, so his instance is different. But what did he respond with? He responded with a rifle, okay? So he didn't think it was a LaRpER's fantasy. And guess what? It's probably a good thing he did, okay? If you look into the details of that gunfight that he ended up getting in, that was pretty intense, and I think a rifle was the determining factor of whether he lived or not. And I also think that he would be much happier in that instance if he already had preloaded mags, if he already had some medical on him, right, that he could just grab and go with, rather than having to grab a handful of ammo and a magazine, right? So having this stuff is not a LaRpER's fantasy, and understanding how to use it is not a LaRpER's fantasy. That is exactly what the American civilian was founded on, right? And you being able to carry a pistol for convenience sake anywhere you go to protect yourself against the daily asshole, that is also your right as an American civilian. So we need to stop eating each other, because it's counterproductive, and it's like I said, it's counterproductive, and it creates a negative connotation towards the tools that are necessary to a free state. So have a good one.